Welcome to the Be Well podcast. Here we share real stories, have honest conversations, and offer practical wisdom to help moms prepare for pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and beyond. I'm your host, Candace Jackson, and I'm so excited to have Sadie here with us on today's episode. Welcome, Sadie. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do for a living, and then also where are you living currently?
Okay. My name is Sadie Searles, and I currently live in East Texas. As a profession, I am a physical therapist. And a little bit about me, I have four boys, and three of them just happen to be triplets, and they just turned 1 year old. And then my oldest son is four, soon to be five.
All right. So let's get into it. So let's talk a little bit about your birth experiences. Let's start with your oldest son. And what year was your oldest son born? And tell us a little bit how that pregnancy unfolded.
So he was born in 21,
Okay.
and unfortunately, I was a single mother at that point. But I am very headstrong and independent, so I took every opportunity to learn everything about pregnancy and everything like that. And at that point in time, I had just been accepted into PT school, so I was like super afraid that it wouldn't have worked out. But I didn't let that stop me. And when I was pregnant, I just got to focus on my pregnancy and being a mom before I even started PT school. So that was great for me. And I just consumed as much information as I could just to prepare myself. The pregnancy wasn't too bad. And then when I gave birth, he was 11 and a half pounds. So he was,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, he was a big baby. And like I knew that he was growing large for gestational age. But during that pregnancy, I didn't have any other medical issues. They tested me for gestational diabetes because he was growing so large. But at the end, he was just a large child. And then afterwards, I was very thankful to have this thing called a nurse family partnership. I took advantage of all the resources too. So she came to my house and she was like, checking in on me right after the birth happened, after I had been discharged, and she checked my blood pressure. It was skyrocketed,
Oh
and
my
that was maybe 2 or 3 days after I given birth. And I mean, like it was like 200 over 100 and something. Like it's just a scary number. But so I went into the hospital at that point, and now that I'm thinking about it, I just have this tendency to ignore symptoms because I was having headaches and they weren't going away, and that was one of the big ones that they tell you to watch out for. And I just say, I'm fine. But thank goodness for that nurse, because I went in and I was on a 24-hour magnesium drip, which wasn't fun at all. But I was in, treated, and I came out, and then the rest is just the postpartum stuff.
Oh, wow. You experienced a lot with just your first pregnancy. So let's go all the way back to you being pregnant. And
Mhm,
you said that you already knew that you were measuring kind of large.
mhm.
So they tested you for gestational diabetes. And so at that point, what was your obstetrician saying at that point with you measuring so large?
He had extra fluid. He was just like his head circumference, the weight and everything that they measure was just growing bigger for that age and time. And one of the things that they want to test you for is for that extra fluid. That's just a sign that it could be gestational diabetes. And that's why they do. I did the test twice at that point because they just want to be sure. Like, are you sure this baby is so big? Because it's usually correlated together. And then there might be other issues with gestational diabetes and everything else like that. Beyond that, at that time, I really, really, really wanted to do a natural birth. I didn't want to do an epidural. This is my first experience. I just wanted to see how it would go. And I didn't know that he was going to be that large because at my last ultrasound, I got a bunch of ultrasounds with him because he was so big. They were like, he's going to be 8.5 pounds. And he came out as 11 and a half pounds. And I had the C-section at that delivery. And I really, really wanted to do natural, but I'm glad I listened because I have no idea how that would have gone with
So
it.
you had a scheduled C-section. How many weeks were you when they scheduled you for the C-section?
Well, they induced me first, and that
Okay.
was at 39 weeks and 6 days.
Okay. So how was the induction process?
I didn't move forward very well. They put
Okay.
I want to say it was Pitocin. I'm not sure. I don't remember if it was IV or they put something on my cervix to thin it out. It wasn't thinning out. He wasn't dropping. He was like, when they measure how far the head is from the pelvis, he was like -3. He was very
Okay.
comfortable and was not coming down. So they said either you try to push and you have a hard time and then you have an emergency C-section, or we just do the C-section now. So that's what I ended up deciding.
So about how long were you in labor until they decided to do the C-section?
That's the funny part. I didn't really feel it or experience labor. I had a hard time feeling any contractions. I didn't feel him moving down. I didn't feel that pressure that everyone talks about.
Mhm.
I don't know if it was just because he was so high or anything, or he just wasn't budging. I didn't really feel it as much.
Okay.
And then they said epidural, and I didn't feel anything after that. So
I got you. So as a single mom in the hospital with your first, did you have any support there with you? Or like just talk about support being a single mom or just being single and being pregnant and then going into the hospital and even navigating postpartum while being single?
right. So my oldest or my sister that's about a year and a half older than me was with me in the hospital. And I chose that because my mom is very dramatic and I knew I didn't want that. So the one thing I had learned through the whole process of being pregnant and everything, especially being a single mother, is that I had to advocate for myself. So I did have a relationship with a doula. So I was going to have a doula there, but once it became a C-section situation, she was basically no longer needed. And of course, with my family, being a single mom, that's the only way I do anything is just with my family. So even when I was in school after the birth and everything like that, my family is what supported me through school. And during that time with pregnancy, I was scared. Obviously, everybody would be scared to just, think you're going to become like a single mother. But it amazes me every single time how people, gather around you and just really support you. In my family, at least, I can't speak for everybody's obviously, but you just, and people bless you just randomly. So I've been very blessed, whether it's from coworkers or friends or anything like that. And I have a tendency to want to be so independent and want to just do it all on my own. But I've learned specifically with my first one, and then definitely with my second pregnancy, that I need all the help I can get, and got to let people in my house and let them do stuff for me.
Yes, that's an important lesson. As women, we kind of just take on everything and just pile it on. And we need the support, as much support as we can have. So it's good that you had a supportive family to be able to kind of surround you and help you through everything. So navigating postpartum, you just had a C-section. You have a new baby. And so you had the nurse that come in that, was doing the checks and everything on you. And you said that you were ignoring all of the symptoms that you were having. So, other than headaches, what were some of the other symptoms that you were experiencing?
um, Beyond for just preeclampsia specifically, or do you just mean like postpartum?
You could
Like,
talk about, so let's talk about preeclampsia and then we'll talk about just postpartum in general.
okay. So for the preeclampsia, specifically, it's hard to say. It felt like I was swollen, and you definitely feel more fluid in your body. But I just felt very swollen, even though, and I kept putting off like, you just had a baby, you just had a baby, you're gonna feel like that. It's whatever. And I work in the medical field, and I still I still do this to myself. But I was very swollen, and I would get hot very easily, and the headaches was the big one for me. Um, and then with the headaches, they don't go away with medicine. Like I would put like ice on my head, and I would take Advil thinking that, oh, I have to take my pain medicine for this or whatever else. And that's another thing with a C-section. You have a whole wound in your abdomen, and just moving around is rough at that point. So you don't know whether or not to pay attention to those symptoms or the symptoms you're having of what could be extremely high blood pressure. But I had the resources to check my blood pressure. I was just like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Um, but as far as postpartum goes, I had a lot of rage. That was a huge one for me with my first one. Um, I had let someone come in. It's another independence thing. I'd let someone come in and do some laundry for me when I was in the hospital. And when I came home, they had rearranged stuff in my house, and that just it threw me for a loop. I was like, why would you do this to me? I had
Yeah.
everything where I wanted it. Um, but you have, again, my mom was with me, and I was like, Mom, you can go home. And she was like, I think it's best if I stay. And I'm like, just leave. And she's like, no, I think it's good if I stay. So just accepting the help and all that kind of stuff. So
That's
Yeah.
huge. That is a huge thing to be able to accept help. But sometimes, you know, it gets to the point where you like, I like the things my certain way. I like to have, you know, a peace of mind in my own home and everything. And sometimes, you know, having that help to kind of, you know, insert themselves in places
Mhm.
sometimes you may not necessarily want them. All right, so now let's transition to your 2024 birth.
Mhm.
So you recently gave birth to triplets. So let's talk about that. Let's even talk about conception. Was it natural? Did you have to go through any type of fertility? Because you rarely hear about someone naturally carrying triplets. So let's
Right.
talk about that.
So conception, I had, and this is, I mean, I guess I'm just talking about it anyway, but I had just met someone and we were
Okay.
just getting serious after like 3 or 4 months. And then bam, I was just became pregnant. And I was just thinking, it's one baby. Oh my gosh, I'm having another baby. My oldest son was 3 years old, and I was just, and so I again, very independent. I went to my first ultrasound by myself. I was like, it's fine. I just want to see if the baby's okay. We'll see what the plans are. This was at the end of my school. I had to take my boards. I took my boards pregnant. Oh my gosh. And I didn't know they were triplets yet. But after my boards, I went to the ultrasound and she puts the scanner on me and I see 2 sacs. And I'm like, oh gosh. And then she's measuring and I see 3 spines. I'm like, oh, I was like, is there a third one in there? And she's like, I think so. And this was, this is a free clinic. It was, I went there with my first pregnancy and they were very nice. And I started crying and she was like, what are the tears for? And I was like, you just told me I had 3 babies.
Yes.
So it was a completely spontaneous pregnancy. Nobody in my family or his family have twins or multiples in their family. So and I post on social media. People ask me all the time, "How did you get triplets? Do you do the IVF?" I would never have been able to afford that in the first place, but I don't know how it happened. I have no idea.
Wow, that is amazing, amazing. Okay, so you find out that you have triplets. Now you have to navigate pregnancy and then also your boards and everything with that. So how was that? Like, what was your mindset or your mentality during that? Because I can only imagine, like, girl, I got pregnant with one and it was just too much for me. So I'm just
Okay.
like, three, and then you're in physical therapy school and all of that. So let's talk about what was your mental health like?
Again, your support system is huge. At
Yeah.
this point, I did have a partner. He is, he's perfect. We're together still, and he really helps me. Like whenever I told him I was pregnant, I didn't tell him I was coming to his house. I just knocked on the door in the morning and I said, "Hey, I got to talk to you. I am pregnant." Because the first time was so like, that was not supposed to happen. But the way he reacted to it made it a huge difference. His family is extremely supportive. Immediately felt like I was family with them, and they took on grandparents of my older son. Huge deal with that. And now I forgot what your question was. What was your
Oh,
question
so
again?
your what was your mental health like
Oh,
during
mental
that
health.
time? Yeah.
So having that support supported my mental health. That's the point I was trying to get to. Um, because before, again, I was trying to be so independent, but then when I find out I'm having triplets, I'm like, there's no way I can ever not need someone's help at all times. So having their support was huge for my mental health. Of course, I was anxious, I was terrified, I was overwhelmed. I'm still overwhelmed all the time just because that's I have 4 children all of a sudden. And
Yeah.
it's just and navigating through school, I locked in. I said, this is my last moment. I've never let a child or children, I guess, triplets gonna stop me from just, breaking down and not doing everything I just worked for. 3 years. I
Yes.
was 3 years of school. It was very hard. It was very rough. And I was like, I had to, just convince yourself you're tough enough for this. You're smart enough. You've worked hard enough. You're a good mom. So you're gonna be a good mom to your kids, no matter how many they become. But
Yes.
with the boards and everything, yeah, I just locked in and did it, and thank goodness I passed the first time because that would have been rough to take it again. But I passed it. I got a job. Um, I did have to change plans. I was planning to move out with him and my son, and we just stayed here. And thank goodness, because we of course we need all that support. And at my job, I just focused on my job. It's just like it's not necessarily dissociation, but I would just say I just focus on what is happening right now. I cannot control my pregnancy. I can do everything I can as far as being healthy and doing all that kind of stuff. And again, focusing on my mental health, that was a huge thing because I had learned so much in school. I'd become a medical professional during the first 3 years, and now all of a sudden I have to learn about triplets. Like it was a huge gap in my knowledge. Like I learned about
Mhm.
pregnancy and all this kind of stuff, and I just became a PT. But it's all new to me. But I'm a learner. I'm a lifelong learner. So I tried to consume as much as I could. But another lesson I learned from my first pregnancy was just to limit that too, because there's so much information. There's so many horror stories. People give you the most unsolicited advice and scary stuff to tell you, especially when you're. I was working at the time and I was pregnant and I work with patients, and the amount of boundaries that people don't have is crazy. People try to touch you. People try to tell you about, oh, I had triplets and one passed away and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh goodness, okay, great. And it is overwhelming, but again, you're able to vent to other people. I'm able to tell my boyfriend about everything that happened that day, and just having all these people around you to support you, especially whenever I had several breakdowns. I had breakdowns about how am I going to do this? How am I going to give my children enough time? How am I going to have enough money to support my kids? And all this stuff goes through your head, but whenever you have that support, it makes a huge difference.
Oh, support is
Yeah.
so unmatched. It really is. Okay, so you and your triplets, you said now you told me that they were large for gestational age. So what did that mean for pregnancy management and then also for your delivery? And then were you still seeing the same obstetrician as well that you had with your first pregnancy?
Yeah, so it was the same doctor, and I was also seeing maternal fetal medicine. I think that's
Yeah.
the one.
Mhm.
And at first, it was monitoring every 2 or 3 weeks, and then it became every week, and then it became every other day at the very, very end. And with monitoring, with so many ultrasounds, you get to see your kids all the time, and you get to see how big they're measuring. And it was nerve wracking because of the way that they were. So with the pregnancy, there was two placentas, and baby A had his own placenta, baby B and C shared a placenta, and there was a risk of twin to twin transfusion with B and C. And that's just another thing. I tried to limit it like to what my doctor is telling me, not to just go into what is twin to twin transfusion, all this kind of stuff. Let me make myself
Right.
crazy, but staying informed about what that was. There was a high risk for that. Because I had preeclampsia before, and because it's a multiple pregnancy, I was at higher risk for preeclampsia. So they started me really early on aspirin and a few other medications to keep my blood pressure lower because that was just the main concern. And then again, for the gestational age, large for gestational age, I had to be monitored for the blood glucose test. They tested me 2 or 3 times just to make sure that that wasn't an issue. Um, Near the end, with the blood pressure and the preeclampsia, my activity had to be reduced. So I was working up until the very end until they told me to, but I did have to end up doing like maybe 3 days a week at work and no lifting and no, excessive force and everything like that. And at the very end, I was only supposed to go to 35 weeks, and I made it to 33, 6 days. And it was just another, I should have recognized symptoms before. I felt at this time with the preeclampsia, that's why I went in. I went early. I think I was scheduled for the following week, and I just went in early because my blood pressure was pretty high, but I also had these like weird jitters that I didn't really understand. So I went in and had the delivery then, and I just followed their advice the whole time with the activity and everything else with monitoring.
So the experience from your first to having the triplets, what was the hospital experience like? I know you were induced with your first and then it ended in a C-section. So how was that experience of you being in the hospital? How were you treated as someone carrying triplets? And something else that I wanted to also touch on was the fear. So we talked about a little bit of the fear that, just rando people that would come to you and tell you all these random stories. So sometimes, in the hospital setting or even just with the nurses and staff that are at your obstetrician's office, they can kind of, feed fear into you as well, especially with someone that's carrying multiples. So what's some of that fear that they kind of try to put on you in that setting, also going into the hospital if you're about to deliver? So what were some things that you were hearing then as well?
Um, Surprisingly, none of the nurses, well, the OB said something very fearful, but None of the nurses were really telling me anything scary like that. They were very
Okay.
supportive. They were interested, and they asked me questions. But the main fear came from people who were either my patients or just heard this girl's pregnant with triplets. So those are just
Right.
random strangers. Um, and some of the fear was I had a patient that I treated, and at the very end, their spouse came up to me and was like, "Hey, we don't have any grandkids. We can really take care of them. If you don't need all of them, just give me one." And at first, I was like, "Ah, ha, ha, that's funny. Okay, bye." But he was like, "No, I'm serious. I think I could." And he just kept going and going, and then it made me extremely uncomfortable because I was like, "Oh my gosh, this guy is making me feel weird." And like the lady at the front desk was like, "I think it's time for you to leave." So that was
Mhm.
very like, oh my gosh, people are going to be obsessed with me and my children because we have triplets.
Yeah.
And then another fear came from another triplet mom. She said that, one baby had a lot of respiratory issues, and one baby was very small, and another baby had this issue and all that kind of stuff. And it's not her fault. She just wants to share, obviously. But for me, I was like, oh my gosh, what if I have these issues? I think that's most pregnant women. You hear a story and you're like, oh my gosh, that could be me. Um, and then the OB told me that they've only had two other triplet deliveries, and one was a surprise quad. I was like, why? What? You didn't need to share that with me. That was that was useless. But um, that was an irrational fear to me because I was like, they've measured this 10,000 times. There's no way they could miss a baby. They're too big. There's no more room in there. How could they? They could never miss a baby. But I was treated very well. When I was in the hospital, when I was at my OB appointments, I was treated very well. I didn't have any issues at all. And I think that, especially the nurses are, they're the people that are reporting to the doctor, and they're the ones that are looking at me, checking on me, paying attention to me, and listening to me when I do talk to them. And again, I was huge about being an advocate for myself and asking certain questions and doing all that kind of stuff and getting comfortable doing that, especially with medical professionals. And because I work in a medical field, I feel like I've gotten a lot of experience with that too. So it just helped me during that situation. But yeah, I think I was treated very well when I was in the hospital.
Good. I love that. So after you deliver, you
Hmm.
have three children. You're in the hospital. This is new to you. This is not just one baby.
Hmm.
So what were some of the things that you were experiencing? I know they had a NICU stay, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so they had a NICU stay, and then you were there in the hospital in postpartum recovery. What was that experience like after having just delivered three?
Okay. This will be a very long answer. So, but during that time, whenever I get an epidural, I don't know if it's just the anesthesia or whatever things that they're giving me, I become very apathetic. So I'm very chill. I'm just like all chilled out the whole time. And the only thing that made me cry, and it happened both times, I'm very chill in the in the OR, just chilling out, waiting for my baby. When I hear the baby cry, I like it's like I feel like I snap too, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my babies are okay. So I saw they came out so quick. It was 2 minutes. They showed me over the thing. They put him over there in oxygen. Here he's crying. Good. It was just like one, two, three. It happened so quickly. And my boyfriend's here with me, and he's just like, he's I don't know, it's just crazy, and he's telling me about it. And if he needs oxygen and the weight and everything like that, it's so exciting. I'm like, how much do they weigh? How much do they weigh? How much do they weigh? That's what I want to know. um and at the end, it was my oldest was 6 pounds 2 ounces, middle was 5 pounds even, and the last one was 413. And I was shocked. That was my main thing, was like, oh my gosh, they're huge. That was not what I thought they were going to be. I was hoping for 5 pounds each, but yeah. But after that, again with the apathetic, it returned because they have to wheel me out and everything, and then recovery, and the babies will immediately leave. And they sew me up, and I come to the recovery room. And at the recovery room, I'm feeling very weak. I feel very weak. I feel like that's normal. You just got cut open. My bottom half is still numb. And I can see my mom comes in and tells me like everything's okay. But at one point, I can't remember if it was right before or when I was in the recovery room, but they said that I couldn't see them for the first 24 hours. I can't remember if it was, I don't recall the exact reason, but that was my first like, what? Like, I just I spent all this time and now you're going to tell me that I can't see them yet. But my boyfriend
Right.
goes, like, I was just like, what? But anyways, I was upset about that for a minute. And then the nurses are coming in, they're doing the press and the fundal massage, whatever they call it. And I can see their faces like, and they go get the doctor and they come back. And at this point, I'm very just weak and kind of, I feel out of it. And thank goodness for nurses again. I was bleeding so much. And the last thing I really remember really well was the lactation specialist coming in and putting the breast pump on and me trying to get that done. But I'm in and out of it. And according to my family, I turned white as a sheet and just slumped over. Um, so I'm losing blood. That's what's happening. I'm losing lots and lots of blood. And at one point, they tell me that they need to put a Jada pump inside of me. So they have me on my back. They put knees to chest, and they put the pump into the top of my uterus, which is massive because I just produced triplets. And they're waiting for that to, like, stop the bleeding, but it's not happening. And the very last thing I remember was just being wheeled through the hospital. They had to take me back to the OR. They had to wheel me through the hospital, and the last thing I remember is just them talking about doing a full hysterectomy. The last consciousness that I have, I said, "Let me keep my ovaries," and then I was out. And then the next day, I had woken up in ICU, and I was intubated and restrained to the bed. And that was extremely traumatic for me, because I have a terrible gag reflex anyway. As soon as I wake up and I'm conscious, obviously they're weaning me off the ventilator because I didn't know what had happened. Um, they had to wean me off the ventilator. I'm freaking out. I'm gagging and I'm throwing up everywhere. So that's how I woke up in ICU, and I can see my sister and I can see my dad, and they're telling me that everything's okay, and I have to learn what had happened. But apparently, I had lost so much blood. They had to go in there for an emergency. It was called a B-Lynch stitch. They had to tie up my uterus basically to get it to stop bleeding. But I don't know if it's because my blood became so low, like my blood volume became so low, or it was the blood pressure thing. I had an eclamptic seizure. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
when that occurred. Whether I don't know if it was on the OR table or what, but it had happened. So when I had woken up in the ICU, I had lines and tubes everywhere. I had all these neuro things on the top of my head. And this may sound selfish, which obviously I was in the ICU. I was like, oh my God, did they shave my head? I was like, oh, please tell me they cut my hair. Oh my gosh. But I was very, again, apathetic. That I don't know if it was because of the drugs that I was on or I had to go back in the OR. I was apathetic. I didn't see my oldest son. I couldn't see my babies. I didn't know, it was hard. And I just remember staring at the clock for a long time, just waiting for the next thing to come. But, whoa, sorry. But I did have to have an MRI, and my brain was fine. My blood was fine. But I was extremely swollen. So I was big pregnant. I was pregnant with triplets, but I was swollen. I mean, like, out by the side. And I was in a lot of pain, just all across my abdomen. And excuse me. When I finally got to see my kids, they were just these precious little things, and they were in the NICU, and they were all in their little incubators, and I was just so happy that they were healthy, and they didn't even need oxygen that long. They were so strong.
Right.
They were so good at the NICU. Sorry.
No, you're fine, honey.
Goodness. Oh gosh, I knew this was gonna happen,
Mhm.
uh, but yeah. So after that, I went into the normal recovery, and after maybe 5 days, I was discharged, and I was in so much pain that night of discharge. I just went straight back, and they told me this is the second traumatic thing that happened. So they told me that I had so much fluid. I was in so much pain. It was hard to turn in the bed. It was terrible. And I hadn't gone to the bathroom in a few days. And they told me that I had this like free bleed at first. I was like, what? I have a free bleed? So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go in the OR. They come back, it's not a free bleed, it's just fluid in your blood, but you have an ileus. So that's just like basically like a blockage in my bowels. So they tried to do an NG tube through my nose, down my throat. I didn't know it then, but they tried to do that when I was in surgery in the OR whenever I had first had the babies, and it didn't work. So that's why they had to intubate me. So they tried to do this while I was awake, and everything else like that, and in so much pain. So they're trying to stuff it down my nose. It's not working. I'm bleeding everywhere. They do it to the other nostril. It finally goes in. I immediately start throwing up, and it's on a suction, so it's just suctioning everything out. Um, and they're like, "Yeah, you have to wear that for 24 hours." And I'm like panicking. I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't know if I can do this." Thank goodness my babies are in the NICU, and my family's taking care of my oldest son. So they wheel me back to the room. It comes out, and I'm freaking out. I'm having a panic attack. That's when my mental plummeted because I was just traumatized. Um, they try to do it again. I'm still freaking out. They're just trying to stuff things down my nose, and I'm just freaking out. And I literally said, "I will do anything else. Don't stick that down my nose anymore." So finally, I was still swollen, super swollen, but eventually I went to the bathroom and everything was okay, and I got discharged. Um, so that's week 2. I get 2 babies discharged from the hospital. Every day that I'm in the hospital, I go and see my babies. I try to breastfeed. I give them chest to chest every day. I see my babies, and I'm still in so much pain, but I'm doing my very best to just be there for my children as much as I can, pumping as much as I can with everything else. Um, so after 2 weeks, again, my babies are strong. They were very strong in the NICU. 2 were discharged, but the third one wasn't. And at that time, every day that I went to the NICU, there was a nurse there that randomly was feeding they never feed the baby in the incubator. They always take the baby out and they put they taught me how to position my baby for feeding. She's feeding my baby in the incubator like this, and it's spilling all over his chest. It's like the wrong bottle. And I'm like, let me do that right now. Like, I take my baby out of her hands and I was like, get me, like, I took over and I was like, what are you doing? So I had complained to whoever about that. And after that day, he was not discharged. That baby was not discharged from the hospital. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, this lady made my baby stay in the hospital. She's doing this to me because I told on her, and I'm freaking out. And they're like, no, he had an event. And I was like, what event? She made that in my head. I was just like, this lady it's because he's a triplet. I was going nuts. And I had to have the nurse, like, I was being discharged and I was leaving my baby at the NICU, and that killed me. And the nurse had to show me. She was like, this is the EKG. This really happened. It's okay that you feel this way, but and it's just those moments where someone has to explain to you and be like, it's okay. I know you feel like this, but like, you're not crazy. You're just a new mom, and this is all happening again. Um, so sorry.
No, you're fine.
um, so the 2 babies come home, and one night, I have 2 newborns. I'm still in quite a bit of pain. I'm still swollen, and we're just trying to figure it out. Me and my boyfriend, my mom. There's people staying with us. I have so much help, and I'm laying in bed. I'm sick half the time, but one day I just can't breathe. There's a large pain in my chest, and I can't breathe. So I go to the ER, and they say that I have so much fluid in my stomach that I have pneumonia, all this kind of stuff. So I'm back in the hospital again, and they put me on diuretics. I lose like 30 pounds in 2 or 3 days. I had so much fluid. I mean, and when at my highest weight, it was I was 275. I went from 275 to 209. It was massive from losing. I mean, the babies, the blood, all the fluid. It was just this huge shift. Um, and then when I was finally discharged from there, I was on antibiotics for a few days. I was finally discharged from there. At that point, I'm like, if I go back in this hospital, I'm gonna lose my mind. But I get discharged the day before my last baby gets discharged from the hospital. So yeah, I was in a lot of pain, a lot of pain, but I did as much as I could at that time, and it was very rough mentally, physically, emotionally. It was a lot. It was a lot, yeah. And that was
Yes,
maybe a month.
a lot. You
Yeah.
experienced a lot in such a short period of time. So after you got home, you have triplets, you have your older son. What is your mental health like then? I know you said you had support and stuff, but still, I know that still had to have been a lot, especially after everything and processing what all had happened to you in the hospital while caring for these boys.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Um, it was very rough. I just felt I was overwhelmed, but I couldn't do anything. I was very frustrated. Again, with my personality, I want to do as much as I can. I just felt like crap a lot. And I really had to learn to give myself grace because I was not everybody could even try to do what I did, and I still tried my best, and it was very rough. It was very rough. So I feel like sometimes I focus. What helped me the most was just focusing on I'm alive. I get to see my babies. I get to do as much as I can for them, and I'm still here. I'm still here, and I'm still doing it. That was a huge part, and just knowing that even though I was starting at like the ground floor, it's like there was nowhere but up, and every day I noticed things getting better, and uh, it was like the highest highs and the lowest lows, beautiful, beautiful babies. They're all healthy and growing, and my son becoming a big brother. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. And then I was just feeling like, yeah,
Yeah.
it was
So
rough.
how has that experience, everything that you've experienced, how has that shaped how you show up as a mother?
Um, that's a tough question. I think this just grateful. I think it makes me just cherish every moment with them. Um, and then I just know that I can't. You cannot fill from an empty cup. Uh, I know that even though I could feel selfish about myself, like doing certain things for myself, but at the end of the day, if they don't have a mom that can do anything for them,
Right.
yeah. So I try to take care of myself first and make sure that they get everything they need. Um, but also as a mother, as me as a mother, the whole like control. I want to do every single thing for them, letting other people just be part of their lives rather than me controlling every single aspect of it. Especially with the health problems, like there's just certain things I couldn't do with the surgeries and everything. I had lifting restrictions for a while. And I'm like, I'm gonna break those lifting restrictions because my children want their mother. Like I can't not lift them. So yeah, you break some rules, but again, just trying to be as healthy as I could to be the best mom I could be. But not feeling too bad about being selfish, especially when it came to my health stuff.
How has your experiences shaped how you show up as a physical therapist? How are you showing up for your clients?
Um, as a PT, I do public health, and that's another huge reason why I did it. I pursued that when I had after my first pregnancy, when I was in PT school, I got into it. So I'm specifically attuned to mothers. Whenever I have a pregnant patient, I immediately want to get them resources. I want to give them as much information as they want. I want to make sure that they're not overwhelmed by it, by whatever information I give them. Um, and there's a specific story that comes to mind when it comes to PT because I was pregnant with the triplets, and I had a patient that had just become a mother, and she had all these weird symptoms, but she came in for like right knee pain. And all these red flags were coming up. She can't hold her child. She can't walk right. She can't do all this kind of stuff. And in my head, I'm like, this is not right. I have to get her help right now. Like, this is not normal for a woman to have given birth and have these issues. So that's kind of special. I don't know if it's a special attunement to those type of people, but that I was the one who said this is not right, and that's right why she was diagnosed with MS later. Um,
Mhm.
because no one was listening to her. She didn't even get prenatal care, and once that happens, it just I was the first person to say this is wrong, and she was a woman of color. It was huge. It was huge for me because, and that's what I do for my patients as well. Women of color, pelvic health issues, whether they're pregnant or just having a knee surgery, just telling them to advocate for themselves, whether they're having a baby or not. I just feel like I have that attunement for sure when I'm a PT and practicing. Um, and it's funny because I was recently accused of by a coworker who doesn't do PT that I give special treatment towards women of color. And I was like, if you knew anything, you would know that it is notoriously true that medical professionals have an unconscious bias, whether it's conscious or not, a bias towards women of color. When I was a PT as in my first clinical, I had my CI tell me that Black women feel pain differently. They're not in that much pain. They're dramatizing their pain. That is a terrible stigma against women of color, especially in PT. So I don't care if I get accused again. I am taking care of my patients. I don't care what color you are, but I know that women of color, people of color are not treated the same. So I'm gonna be the freaking buffer if I can. That's how I in PT, that's what I do. Yeah.
That's good that they have someone like you to stand up for them and understand, because that bias is definitely there. Where, it's sad, even medical textbooks still say that women of color don't experience the same pain as other women do.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they have you. What last advice do you have for any mom out there that's pregnant with a set of multiples and she's just trying to navigate that while also balancing a career or a school or a relationship and all of that? What advice do you have for that mom?
Um, this is very vague, but I feel like doing just what's best for you, because whether you look up the information up online or someone's going to give you information about the pregnancy or their experience or anything else, take what resonates and leave what doesn't, because you will easily become overwhelmed. Being pregnant with multiples is enough. It's enough. It's enough anxiety. It's enough pressure. It's enough everything. So try your best not to let all this information coming at you like a fire hydrant overwhelm you even more. Just being able to just separate what you care about and what's important and everything else like that. As far as people pregnant with multiples, for sure.
That's excellent advice. So I am so happy that you were able to share your story with our listeners. So can you please let everyone know where they can find you on social media? If you have a website, how can they connect with you to follow with your journey?
My social media handles are TikTok and Instagram. They are both Triplet Mama Sadie. And then on Facebook, I'm Sadie Searles. But yeah, we have lots of fun on there. I post all my kids and we have lots of fun. So you guys can definitely give me a follow. And I'm looking forward to kind of posting more about PT and my experience and everything like that. So I'm excited.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sadie, for sharing your story. It was very, very heartfelt. So, this is Candace letting you know that your voice and your story matter more than you know. So, until next time, be well, Mama.